Should be. I always feel really good when I hear the recording in progress, knowing that technology is on my side. So welcome everybody from wherever you are. If it's morning, afternoon, evening, I hope you've had a beautiful day. I myself am in holiday mode and time is just passing, but it's like getting the things done and I'm enjoying just being and doing the things, but then things are just going by really quickly as well. So I'm losing concept of time, which is nice. So for those that are new to this space, my name is Marie and welcome to the beautiful new Ladies in Wanaki project. And we've got a beautiful guest here today, lovely Emily. And I'm so excited to have you in this space, Emily. I know we met a couple of months ago, I think.
The time is flown.
I know. And
it was that last week.
That's it. I know. And it was just, I think we were both starting our Facebook groups at a similar time and growing and connecting organically. And I remember seeing your page. I'm like, who is this woman? And I think you had some beautiful friends that were like contacting me. I'm like, oh, this sounds really cool. And I started looking and we're just on the same wavelength, and I love this virtual space in the way that we can also connect positively with people around the world and just share story and insights. And yeah, just really excited to have you in this space. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about you and your journey and we'll get into our topic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Rory. Yeah, I think it was love at first message with me and you. Like we kind of instantly bonded, and I think we have quite similar views about seeing things holistically, definitely trying to see things from all angles. A bit about me, I am currently a coach. I'm working with female coaches and therapists. And it's all about the relationship between your self-identity and your identity within your business. People may not see the link between the two, but a lot of the times our businesses are expressions of us. And growth in one area, so your self-growth, is often reflected positively in your business. But at the same time, if you have maybe some things that need, let's say, resolving from your past, like sometimes those things can also play out when it comes to your business or dealing with your own clients. So we're all about healing kind of those connections and really healing those kind of fundamental pillars when it comes to having not just your health, but the health of your business as well. So yeah, my background, I was a nurse for over 10 years, working in mental health settings, also did some community nursing as well. And kind of came into the space through hypnotherapy, which is my background. Also have some psychotherapy background as well. And just felt really called to, I suppose, just be more directive in my approach and to bring that mentoring aspect into my work. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Beautiful. I love how, everything that we have in our past is always for us. And I was listening to something like things are never wasted. Everything that we journey on is little bits of tools or wisdom that is preparing us for the next version, the next stage. And for the ladies that are listening in that, that you might not have a business, but in whatever way you show up for yourself in your work, your career, the leadership capacity that you have in your community, this conversation is really important too. Like, the work that you do on yourself and how you show up for yourself every single day, for your family, how you show up for your career, like your business, in community, in service, that ripple effect is just so powerful. And sometimes we don't realize that impact on our own identities and who we are in our beingness on others. Like when I went into teaching, so for those, most people in this space know my background, but for those that are new, I've been teaching for over 15 years. Like even as a teenager, I was teaching in studios and I just loved connecting and just getting out in front of people and just sharing what I knew and doing it in a way that was just gentle and kind and compassionate, but also really clear. And I suppose that's why I also loved going into teaching and being able to become a master of myself in that way of how I communicate with others. But in that journey for myself, it feels like a lifetime ago, there were these core like values and beliefs in like who I was. Like going into study, I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a
Yeah.
teacher. I'm going to be this. And throughout like a whole decade, like I always just saw myself as a teacher. And then I noticed within my own relationships, like because my school was really close to community, like before coming a teacher, this is just coming up for me. Like I remember like walking around in the shopping centers with my husband, being really affectionate, holding hands, and then going into what I noticed over quite a few years, like going into community and having the identity of the role model, of the leader, of the teacher. I found myself noticing over time, like I wouldn't hold his hand anymore because I would be concerned that people would see, you know,
Yeah.
me in that way. And it's like
Yeah.
this part of identity and who we are gets so like fragmented over time. And that's just one little thing that just came up for me naturally just then and thinking about what we're going into. But I noticed in that part of myself, I fractured a lot of things and I separated a lot of things because I was the teacher, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I would stop being his wife and his lover and his partner, and the affection stopped. And I noticed that in my relationships. So it was like that took a long time for me to kind of consolidate and integrate and just let go. But yeah, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think something that I just wanted to offer up as a way of looking at identity. I really like to see kind of like your true self as like the core, let's call it master identity. That's not a great phrase or something, but just think of it as having like a master identity. And that master identity is all knowing. It is your highest potential. It is like you on your best day, like times a million, right? And then every time you encounter something that disagrees with that, you form another identity. And that's why we can have so many, right? So every time we come up against judgment or disapproval or something that makes us feel uncomfortable about who we are, we kind of splinter off like an identity to deal with that feeling. And, you know, the reason why, like, sometimes we get, I suppose, over-identified with things like professions is because the world has told us that these are the blueprints for being, pick one, study it, and be it,
Yeah.
hopefully forever. That's what society tells
Yeah.
us, right?
That we're meant,
And
this is
that's
how to
why,
be successful. This is how to be
yeah,
accepted. Yeah.
yeah, like this is how to, you know, get your parents to say nice things about you at church to their friends, right? You have to pick this identity that's been made by someone else, and kind of play out this role to the fullest. But I think societal identities and personal identities are two separate things, right? But they sometimes get mixed up and we suddenly start to
Mm.
think that, like you said, you know, I am the teacher or I am the nurse. You know, when I was thinking about leaving nursing, you know, some of the emotional just turmoil that came up for me was that I felt like I was dying in a way because I had spent so long invested into this identity of, you know, being a nurse and being registered and, you know, having a PIN number. And these were all these things that gave this identity almost too much structure
Mm.
that I had forgotten kind of who I was at my core. It was almost like I was playing a part,
Mm.
but it was actually a grieving process when
Yes.
I left. it was like months and months. I used to wake up in the morning and be like, what on earth do I do? You know, when I'm playing my role, I know exactly what I do,
Mm,
where I go, what I have for breakfast, the route to work, right? And then when I didn't have that, it was almost like that part of me had died. It
yeah.
was a proper grief response. And then I had to come out of that eventually. And that's a whole other process, right?
Yeah, totally. I love that
Mm,
you brought up about grief and this idea of it's like death and rebirth and
mm,
this resurrection of self, and we're evolutionary beings. And I posted in the chat yesterday that this part of this understanding of identity, this is like the strongest force of our personality that is also connected to ego to keep us safe and keep us in like check of who we are. But it's like how we peel away those layers and let that true core and
mm,
essence and that purity of, you know, that master identity or higher self or soul or high consciousness, however you want to call it, that there is a core essence of who we are. And that's why I also love doing inner child work, because that core essence of who we are that we're born into, that is so pure. And when we are children, or when we notice in our own children, their personalities developing, I've just noticed with my own daughter, like, yeah, the environment shifts and changes us, but there's also this core essence of who they
mm.
are that you're like, oh, I can't change that. That fire
Yeah.
is in you, and that is part of who you are. And when we understand our self energetically, spiritually, emotionally, sexually, all of these ways of beingness in this beautiful human form, it just helps us understand who we are to get back to that core essence and that part of our bodies. But I loved, like, you know, that grieving process you were talking about. And I've shared my story about my miscarriages in this space before. But that grieving process of, for me, was like a number of different things. My inner child not being, you know, actually being lost over what 35 years of whatever, and also my mother, and this whole initiation into motherhood, and this grieving process of not allowing myself to shift into these phases of my life because I didn't know about these, I suppose, ebbs and flows. And it was just like go, 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 and not allowing myself to feel, not allowing myself to grieve. Like, so through those miscarriages, I thought I grieved. I
Yeah.
gave myself rituals and we did things. But then there was this part of me that after the third one, and this deep grief and emotion that came up, that allowed me, I felt like I was dying inside, and I felt so numb, and I felt that I didn't know who I was anymore. And the mother, the teacher, like, even in my, like, came back to myself as I felt broken. I felt like I, you know, was so lost and disconnected to my body was the first thing, but then to others, even though other people were showing me connection. And then I noticed the ripple effect at work. I was becoming bitter. I was noticing that people weren't helping me. And then that was adding to my overwhelm and into my burnout. And I was like, I don't even know if I want to be a teacher anymore. I feel nothing. So this resurrection process is so fascinating, because we're, and particularly as women, like, this is why I love womb work, coming back to our wombs and that shedding process that our bodies do with our cycles, and the idea of these cycles and growth, and like we're so connected in the feminine that monthly it's like this rebirth. You know, our wombs are designed to create life, but also create ideas and create energy. And every month, that in that creation phase, then we shed and we release. And as women, we, and people in general, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, that releasing and shedding in that grieving process, we don't allow ourselves to do and feel. So do you want to talk into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I feel really deeply about. I think there are not enough spaces for us to honor some of those more, let's say, raw and primal instincts, right? That's why we end up suppressing so much or denying so much, right? There's this kind of, you know, neighbors or home and away kind of acceptable, I'm going to use your reference, you know, way of being that's kind of, you know, just the highlights. And even with social media, right, we're seeing the highlights of people's lives. There's no spaces where you can safely, for example, grieve in a way that's not, you know, kind of policed by other people, right? Things like anger, especially for women, I think women have been completely stripped of their ability to feel anger, to express rage, to you know, to express that side of us that, you know, we are not just creative and nurturing, right? There's a part of women that is, you know, like, I suppose like the goddess Kali, right? Is destructress, right? Can blow stuff up and catch, you know, things catch fire, right?
Yes.
And that part of us is just so repressed because we've been brought up in these kind of good girl boxes where we kind of have to be as agreeable as possible. And, you know, there's not really that space for us to fully feel some of these really strong but really important feelings. It's such a shame because we miss out on something. And I think, you know, part of, you know, my healing journey or whatever was learning to reclaim some of those things so that I could reap the benefit, right? When you talk about cycles, the birth and rebirth, it's like we only want the birth, we only want the good bits, we only want the happiness and the smiling and the success and all the rest of it. But the rebirth part, as painful as it is part of the process. We have to embrace that part of the cycle, right? It's the yin and the yang. And if you deny yourself one part, like, you know, I don't think we suffer for it. We're not as healthy or as whole as we should be when we kind of hold ourselves back from some of these things.
Yes. The suffering, I mean, I love how you mentioned goddess Kali, like she's a Hindu goddess, but when you look her up, like I only discovered her this year when I went on retreat for myself, and it was like we did all this work to shed this, it was like shedding identities. I didn't know it at the time, but on reflection I was like, oh, that's what they were doing, this is why I invested in these beautiful women and why I'm going on this, because it was like just shedding these narratives. And it's the stories we tell ourselves that hang on to the identity. But like Callie is, when you look her up, she's just like fierce and ugly, but it's beautiful ugly, and like something where it's like
Ugly.
and it's like, when do we get to release that side of us? And I think of the beautiful Maori culture where they're like, where they put the paints on and they're like, come on, come. And the girls do it too. Like I've got beautiful girls at my past school in the Polynesian culture, and they bring that fierceness. They have beautiful, gentle, just gorgeous movement that I'm like, oh, I don't even know how you move your bodies like that. But then there's this fierceness to them, and there's power, and I got goosebumps now. And I remember seeing them just dance and sing, and then they put the haka in there, but it was feminine and power, and the girls just like had these like faces that were like, people cried. The whole assembly that was watching them were just like so drawn by emotion, because it was so beautiful to see that power being expressed. And that rage that you mentioned, like I was never allowed to feel rage growing up. And every time I would get angry or butt heads, and it was mainly with my mother and her identities and her ways of being, and also that cultural side of things that, you know, I grew up with. And it was just these clashing identities of her story and what I was cultivating and growing into. And there were these clashes, and I was made to feel that I wasn't allowed to be angry, but I would see her anger and rage, and that would come out through me, which then, or at me, when I would try and voice my thoughts and opinions, and then I would go small and be scared, because when I challenged her, and look, she did the best that she could, and I don't even understand how she survived a lot of the things she did, but like that doesn't make it okay. But I can look back at that moment for myself and forgive that, but know that I don't need to hold on to these things anymore or get triggered by these things anymore. But I had to release that rage. And so through my motherhood journey and grieving process, through what happened for me, because at a time I was like, why is this happening to me? And like
Yes.
allowing myself to feel that grief and to feel that rage and to let it out was so powerful, but also so draining on the body. But I had to release it to make room and make space. And it was like, I remember going to this somatic dance thing in the city, and I went a few times because I just had to move it out, and we worked through the elements, and it was just like improvisational somatic dance through just working through the body and the chakras and just dancing it out for an hour. And I remember at one point I'd stopped and I just saw this phoenix, and it was like this fire, it was like this snake coming through, and I just saw myself just like rebirthing into this beautiful phoenix, like out of the ashes of all of those emotions. And this version of myself now, like this was a year ago today, is
Wow.
more than what I could have imagined myself moving into. So how can you share your experience of what happened when you went through your processes of rebirthing and rising?
Rising. It's messy, isn't it?
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's messy. I think, kind of similar to you, one of the warning signs for me was just feeling disconnected from my body. I remember feeling like I couldn't feel my bottom half at all.
Yes.
Like
Mm,
it's almost like a numbness. And I remember I
mm,
used to like start off and I'd be doing meditations and they'd be like, oh, relax your legs and your toes. And I would have like almost like no reference for where those places were in my body. So like there was a lot of, I would say, kind of pent up emotions, a lot of anger. I remember like having acupuncture once, and like literally one of the needles that was on my liver meridian literally jumped out of my hand
yes. Yeah.
because there was literally just so much pent up, and he was like, oh wow,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to take it easy with you, because I had all this pent up rage. And again, it's that rage of not just being able to express your true self. And people talk about self-actualization in a way that, oh yeah, it'd be nice to have it. It's essential. It's treated as something like, oh well, if you self-actualize, then you're lucky. But the blockages that are caused and the trouble that is caused by that denial of being able to be who you are fundamentally, I think is that probably at the cause of a lot of the illnesses that we deal with today, as a modern society. But even at different stages through history, there've been different kinds of repression as well. But my approach to that was actually similar to you, was movement. And I didn't do it in any formal way. It was literally me in my kitchen. My iPhone like gave me a playlist today of like my biggest songs of the year. And it was all music. It was all Haitian music. Haitian, and there's a type of music called compa, which is a beautiful blend of like salsa, and kind of like South American, but there's some French influences as well as Caribbean and African. So it's like real fusion music that just, inspires that need to move. And I remember the first couple of times I was just like, I've actually forgotten how to dance. I can't do it. I'm gonna have to retire. Like I literally could not just connect with myself and connect with my body in any way. And it took some time, it took some stretching, it took, you know, being really intentional about how I wanted to move my body and kind of like almost like regaining authority over it in some way.
Mm.
Um, but at the same time, there was the psychological aspects which were healing what I knew was the issue, which was a lot of suppressed emotion.
Mm.
It was a lot of suppressed emotion to do with basically growing up in an environment like where if I wasn't controlled, it was not safe for me.
Mm.
Um, you know, I remember like being told off and like I could not even express like discontent. Like I would like not change my facial expression and I'd be completely still so that it wouldn't be interpreted as disrespect.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the layers and like somatically, the layers and layers and layers and layers of just pure anger and
Mm.
like sadness that were kind of just locked into, I don't even know where, like I feel like it was every corner of me at some point. And it took time, but you know, something that I will say, especially for people just starting out, when you first like tap into that anger and when you first kind of feel it, it will feel scary. Like
Mm.
I was really convinced, it was like a landmine, right? I was fully convinced that like if I dug too deep, like something was gonna just
Snap.
explode.
Mm.
Uh, and you do need someone, I think, to kind of just hold a safe kind of container for you to kind of do that and work through it. But slowly the layers kind of came off, things softened up. But just kind of going back quickly to the identity issue, there are some identities that you hold within you that are actually holding other parts, other identities hostage.
Mm.
And people don't realize that, but when it's not safe for you to be you, you have identities that take on the role of soldier. They
Yes.
take on the role of being a guard to keep you safe.
Mm.
So sometimes you're trying to shift something, you're trying to change, and the soldiers will be like, no, you know, these aspects of your identity have been locked up for a reason, right?
Yeah.
These were things that were, you know, that were bad. We were told that these are not safe to be, these will put you in danger. So sometimes when you're trying to make your way back to those kind of more original identities, you come up a lot against a lot of resistance. It
Mm.
will be from you, might be from your family who know you to be a certain way. It might be from the people that have known you since you were young. You will come up against resistance in every kind of way.
That resistance
So,
is so hard to push through, isn't it? So hard to push through.
it is, but you have to, I think, be as patient as with yourself as possible. But then you have to extend that patience to the people around you who will have to adjust, you know,
Mm.
to the new version of you or the new identity that you're growing into. Um, and I always say to people, like, if you are around people who are finding your changes difficult, you know, when we love someone, like we don't necessarily love them with any kind of conscious or logical part of us. Like they knew you were like that, really. It's just
Mm.
that you're becoming more of that. You know,
Yes.
like people say, oh, I'm surprised you're doing this, or I'm surprised. They're not really.
Yeah.
They've
They've seen little facets of it through.
seen little glimpses of it, right? They
Yeah.
knew it was in there all along. So sometimes they say that they're surprised, but really they sometimes, you know, like the energy of who we really are, sometimes even if we don't see it, other people have been seeing it.
Yeah, totally. And I love the three things that kind of came up then. This, you know, it's we both talked about movement as medicine, and it's like in order to embody, we need to, number one, have that awareness of how we're feeling and noticing our emotions and allowing ourselves to surrender into that, no matter what that looks like, and to feel them. Because in this human body, we are designed to feel. And when we don't feel, like you said earlier, illnesses happen, we hold it trapped cellularly in our bodies. And movement, you know, I find like when we're talking about numbness in that lower half, you know, we store so much emotion as women in our hips, in our pelvic bowl, which is all connected to carrying our womb space, carrying that energy, carrying our bodies. And so, like, when you notice this tightness and the resistance in your body, it's like, well, how can I lean into that, stretch it? And it's not just physically stretch it, but stretching your capacity, stretching your capacity, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And then that stretch in leaning into the discomfort, in leaning into the resistance, that's where the growth happens. That's where the magic happens. And you don't realize that at the time unless you talk to people that have experienced that. That's why I love having these conversations. And, for me, seeking help started with going to a beautiful psychologist. Actually, I went to my doctor first because I was like, I don't know, I need to go on a mental health plan because I was struggling and I didn't want to deny it anymore. So seeking help is so, so important. And, when you're feeling all of these things, yes, surrendering into it, allowing yourself to feel, but some of these feelings are so dark and painful, and just, go and talk to someone, go and talk to a professional. You've got beautiful doctors around you, and some doctors, you'll know if you're connected to them or if you know that they're just not there, and or a psychologist or a counselor, because when I started talking to my psychologist, not psychologist, my counselor, what did I say? My counselor. Anyway, there's different names. Maybe no, she's a psychologist. She's a psychologist. There are different names for different things. Just looking at the burnout, just breaking, it was actually a lot of emotional intelligence work where I had to notice my emotions and being able to identify and go, well, was that a reasonable response to that? Or was that extreme? Because the stories I was telling myself, the expectations I had for myself, how I was identifying with how I should be in this situation, in this context, was all out of proportion, and it was all in my head. And so it was just being able to verbalize that, but in a space where she could help facilitate and guide me. And I went on so many tangents. And when people go to psychologists or counselors, we again put this like, oh, they're going to judge me, judge me in my life. It's like, judgment is everywhere. Who cares? If you're at this stage, who cares? Like, they're there to help you. Like, I was just like, I don't fucking care anymore. I just want to get it out. And she allowed me the space to go on all the tangents and then bring me back, and then to ground me. And that was the starting point where I was like, well, I feel okay, I feel good, but I want more. I want more of understanding myself. And then I came across some beautiful coaches, which were friends of mine from a past life, like from a dancing life, or it was through this. And then like they moved into coaching. I was like, what are these women doing? What are they doing? Wow. What are they? I'm just like really drawn to them. And it was like, and I was still like struggling, but it's like, how do I get that? How do I become this? And that moreness is, again, very scary. And do you want to talk into like how, so awareness, embodying, feeling, finding ways to get back into your body, is key. But what are some, things that you've noticed and how people then shift, or the process of now shifting and transforming into this new identity of self that we don't know what we're going into?
Yeah. And I think, and I can definitely relate, especially if you don't know what the next version is going to look like. Like, it can be terrifying. You'd be like, I think I said to my sister one day, I'm like, if you find me like dancing in the dark in the garden, like, call someone. I don't know where this is gonna, this is gonna end up, where this is gonna go. But I think that there's definitely a process of letting go when it comes to your expectations about what's coming next. I think you grow in a much more kind of rounded way when you do that. When you say that I am me and I trust that whatever is coming next is going to be good for me and is going to benefit me. Um, and when you feel drawn to people, places, things, activities, definitely pay attention to that. Like those are like breadcrumbs. They're like clues as to where the next place is. The things that we see in other people and we admire them, like it's because we already have that potential within us, right? I wouldn't necessarily look at someone juggling and being like, I want to be a juggler because I don't have it within me, right? But if you do have it within you, seeing that person is going to like awaken, like almost like a hunger for you to be in that place. So take note. We talked a little bit about journaling earlier, but journaling is so important when it comes to really shining that light of self-awareness kind of towards yourself. The things that you think, oh my gosh, this is amazing, or how did that person do that? The things that spark your curiosity. And as you heal, there'll be different ways in which you become creative or more creative. Okay, what are these new gifts that I'm being given? What can I do with them? How am I going to express them? How do I grow this? So it's almost like, kind of seeing where those seeds are and then nurturing them where you find them. So being like, oh, okay, I've got a tiny little shoot here, or I don't know, artistic talent. What water does this thing need in order to kind of like grow and really take root? My second tip would be like, be prepared for confusion. Like it's okay. It's absolutely fine to be confused, but take it as part of your exploration, because sometimes like we have like these really intense bursts of growth, and there may be a little bit of period which is almost like the calm after a storm, where things are just kind of ticking along and you're like, well, where were all the signs and the nudges that I was getting before, and where were all these amazing synchronicities that were happening? Where is all that? Everything's gone quiet and I don't know what to do with this. That bit is all about integration. That pause is that is almost like a breath. Before you go on to the next stage, whatever that may look like, it's almost like taking a breath to say, this is space that I need to learn how to fill. One thing that's become quite clear to me recently, I did some energetic work with another coach, and I realized that I was really good at kind of maybe shifting identities, but where the skill comes in is transferring energy into them. And that's what embodiment is. Embodiment is so much more than acting like the person you want to be. It's actually about directing energy into that new identity that's forming. So imagine,
where focus goes, energy flows.
yes, absolutely. So someone that's like in a transitional state between one identity and another, it's almost like having two glasses, and the old one has been full and you decided, well, I'm not going to give, I don't want to spend my power here anymore in this old identity. I want to invest in this new glass, right? Which is currently empty. So it's about almost transferring the energy from the old into the new. But it's a gradual process, like you're filling up. Now, where some people get stuck, I think, is that they want to pour into the new glass without emptying out the old one.
Yeah, I love this analogy.
Yeah. And it's almost like it's a different kind of burnout. You can get a spiritual burnout as well, where you're trying to pour energy into something that you've not freed up the energy for, right? Or you've not got the capacity for yet. So in that aspect, it's like emptying the glass is almost like healing. It's the releasing, it's the forgiveness work, right? And then when you freed up that energy, you can now direct it into that new glass. And it's going to be fresh new energy nice, clean water. It's going to be all sparkly and it's going to be amazing, right? And really nourishing. So, you know, that's something that I found, like I found I was like building all these new parts of me, new identities. But if you find yourself like falling back a lot, so like you start and you're really, oh, like, oh yeah, I like this new thing that's happening. And then you fall off and then you just lose that momentum, or you slip back into that old way of being. Sometimes there's a bit more healing to be done. Healing releases up that energy, and then you can really focus it onto the next version or the next identity that you're trying to build. So it's like a balancing act, right? You release energy from the old and you bring it into the new.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy. I haven't heard of that, the water, before, but as you were speaking, like something that's come up for me, particularly in this last month, is like this message, this synchronistic message, like make room, make space. And it's like you know, make room in the old, make the space to heal and integrate. So then the growth can happen and the, you know, filling up of the cup in the other one. So that kind of just sat with me then. But that integration piece is so important because, again, it's that feminine of allowing to just be and sit with it. Because, you know, when we have those moments of like, yeah, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, and then it's like, it's almost not like plateauing, but it's like, when's the next thing? And it's like this integration. Like for me, the biggest integration was to, you know, was it August, September last year, to have a 6-week break just to do nothing, just to integrate all of the old and just to empty and to heal, because of that numbness and that, like, I didn't know who I was. I just had to empty everything and do nothing, because nothing is medicine as well.
Oh, yeah.
And just be. And I was like, I'm not going to figure out the next thing. I'm just going to breathe through each day and do nothing and watch Netflix and bring my daughter to school and eat whenever I wanted to, go and do yoga, just do anything for me, anything I wanted. And that letting go process in that integration phase, you know, that was a key factor to then come back and fill this new cup. And it's like that gradual, it happens over time. And like when we think about our lives, like I think about a year from now, so quick, like that's this infinitesimal amount of my whole life. And our, you know, knowing that I'm an eternal being, that we are eternal, that this human existence is this much of actually the capacity. You spoke about capacity of who we are. And when we peel away the layers and we come back to self, we come back to body, when we come back to that core essence, that master identity, highest self, source, God, goddess, universe, that capacity of who we are gets to open up, and we get to play in that realm, and we get to explore what is possible. And you know, there's always things to be released and let go, but the work that you do on yourself now, this is probably, this first stage is probably like the real hardest stage, but we're evolutionary beings. We're going to keep seeing these reflections as we elevate, as we grow, but it might not be that hard next time. It might just be noticing or being aware, you know, and there could be other things that just keep popping up. And it's like noticing, is that my identity, or is that a reflection of past? Or is that a reflection of future, of like the people that, you know, this idea of proximity, of like who we want to become. It's like surround yourself with the people who inspire you, that light you up. And so, did you want to talk a little bit into that, Emily, of how we
environment is really important, and I think that's where you know, the essence of, you know, we've talked a lot about coaching and about therapy. You know, part of that is, it's almost like I like to think of it as like energetic modeling, right? when someone is able to be who you want to be, it's almost like getting a contact high, like not to incriminate myself in any way, but it's almost like, you know, when someone has like a really good vibration, when someone has like a really good mindset, when someone has, you know, the kind of energy that you want to emulate, it's almost like a starter vibration when you're near them and when you're around them, it activates you as well, and vice versa. You know, that's just the way we are as human beings. Like, you know, one person can either drag you all the way down, or they can just elevate you and just make you feel really amazing and bright and hopeful, right? So yeah, who you surround yourself with during that healing process is really, really important. But also, you know, as you heal, be prepared for those people to change really rapidly sometimes, because sometimes you don't even know how quickly you're growing. Um, so it's like a process of like constantly exploring and building new support systems around where you are at the moment, where you're going as well, and making sure that those environments are supportive of what you're trying to achieve. This is just me kind of going into more into the energetic side of things, but sometimes like when you do start to heal, you will be catnip for people that want to get high off you, right? You might find that, you know, you're attracting a lot of people who perhaps need that lift and need that support, which you can offer them, of course, but not in a way that's going to compromise you. This is where, you know, work around boundaries comes in, because boundaries are not just verbal or physical, they're energetic as well. So as you heal, you might find people who are very unhealed are drawn to you because you make them feel good, because they remind you that, oh, you know, this person, like, you know, I want to be like that. They may not be ready at that moment to maybe do anything about it, but just be mindful. This is one of the challenges that comes up during healing. And you have to maintain good boundaries in order for you to maintain your healing as well. I've seen the pattern, and especially I remember like back in my inpatient days, whenever a patient made progress, that was the time to discharge them. Because if they stayed longer, it was almost like the people that were trying to get there would almost overburden the person, and that person would end up sliding backwards. So environment is really important. The people you kind of closely associate with are very important. Obviously, if you're working in any way with clients, or, you know, like, for example, when you're teaching, that's a bit different because the boundary is there, like it's implied. But just be aware, you know, something to be, you're going to, like, people are going to come and talk to you that have never talked to you before, right? Because they know that something's happening. They can feel it. They can feel that your energy is changing. So yeah, environment and the people you hang around with is really important. But yeah, also making sure you've got people that we can have these kind of conversations with, so you don't feel like you're losing your mind as well.
Yeah, so it's
Because,
like,
you know, to reflect that, you know, experience back to you.
and I think, you know, this idea of proximity, and it's like, you know, not only with the people, but and like what podcasts are you listening to? If you're
Mm,
watching TV shows, what are you watching? Like, what books are you reading? Like, I found, particularly after my veg out session last year, where I absorbed all the Netflix things, and then moving into, like, I actually don't watch TV anymore. I don't, unless it's like time with my family to just zone out and try and watch a movie. But even when I'm watching a movie, my brain is still thinking about all the things on purpose that I want to do. And it's like, but yeah, it's like, what books are you reading? It's like, what is inspiring you? And then
mm,
this new identity that gets to be your life, that gets to be this version of you where you continually are shifting and growing, but are flexible and adaptable and can notice
mm,
things more about yourself and others, staying grounded in your body, you know, you'll notice other things just fall away that don't serve you anymore. So,
mm,
like, I have so many books on my bedside table, and I got so many books that, like, I want to read. I've got like 4 books going on at different times, you know,
Yeah.
like on womb work, on things like looking at plant medicine, looking, you know, like at, you know, herbs and what like vibration they have, angels, you know, things to do with like just really interesting, you know, natural or esoteric type of stuff or inspirational thing. I know my husband's desk, he's got Jordan Peterson stuff there, and he's resonated with different things and different people. And it's like I find myself in the car, like there's music that I listen to. Sometimes I listen to the radio, but I'm like, what podcast can I listen to on this drive? And it's like, what can I get inspired by? And that was a real shift, you know, in like, what am I fueling my mind with, you know, in order for me to become and embody this next phase. So what practices am I doing for myself, like, you know, being in my body to live this life of what I want to become and be this person that is healthy, be this person that is authentic, that actually does the things that she says she's going to do, and walk through life with integrity, with grace, with compassion. It's like, how do I do that every single day? It's like practicing gratitude. You know, you mentioned journaling earlier, and I hadn't done that for like ages. And it's only within this last year, it's like taking the notes, journaling it down, noticing what's happening, you know, setting those boundaries that you spoke about, because I never set those energetic boundaries for myself before. And it was like, yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, 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 yes. I'm a yes person. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a like do everything for everybody else. I'm a martyr. You know, I'm going to, and now that I understand these archetypes, which are identities, it's just another name for it. It's like when I notice these versions of self and these archetypal characters, these identities that we hear in stories, I notice that more. And like I will still go into being a martyr at times and doing the things, but I know that I'm doing that, and I'm like, okay, let's just pull
And
back.
you know where you know where the line is.
Yeah. And it's so like, you know, how you embody that in your life is mind, body, spirit. It's like you mentioned, like the water, this crystal clear water. And it's like, well, what are we nourishing our bodies with? If we want to be this version of ourselves that is healthy, that is on the go, that is doing all these things and being of service and walking the walk, or, you know, instead of just talking the talk, it's like, well, how do you embody that through all the things? So it's like eating properly. How do we nourish our bodies so that our brains and our minds can be optimal, so that we have the energy to do the things? And I know we're almost finished, but like, yeah, just any other tips on like embodiment that you would love to share with us?
One like exercise that I sometimes do, like when I'm journaling, is to write some, like, say for example, I want to make a decision. I might write something about write my thought process as I am now, and then I will write my thought process as I would want it to be, right? Your brain actually can't tell the difference between reality and imagination. So even if I imagine what I would do if I was me on the best day ever, I'm already training my neural circuits, like those pathways in my brain. I'm already training them to say, well, this is what we're growing into. This is a possibility. So the next time I come up against this particular thing, you know, you're not going to get the same old responses that you've always done or you've always had. You're going to end up with these new responses that you're like, oh, who thought of that? Like, that's a really good idea. Right? And, you know, where you've been feeling stuck, all of a sudden you might just, it's almost like you're preparing for inspiration. You're preparing for that new energy to just come in and do something really wonderful. And I suppose, like, this is just me, but I like to also anchor in changes that I'm making physically. Like I'm someone that sometimes I forget, like, you know, like when people practice gratitude and stuff like that, I'm very good at forgetting good stuff. Like that's just it's an old pattern, and I'm trying to be better. But what I do is maybe take a picture. Like if I made a really healthy meal, I might take a picture of it. Or if I said I was gonna hoover at the weekend and I did it, I might take a picture of my nice clean carpet. Like, so it's almost like there's little prompts. So you're being really present in what you're doing. So like when I look through my phone, like I can see like, oh, why did I take a picture of that omelet? Oh yeah, because I was being really good that day and I was being, so it's almost like again, it's about building in that evidence into your thinking and into your circuitry that changes are happening. It might be, I don't know, like even like a new piece of jewelry, like a necklace with a particular pendant that really makes you feel like this symbolizes this new version of me.
Love
Right.
it.
I really like doing that. I really like, sometimes I just see a pendant, I'll be like, oh yeah, you know, you brought up that imagery of you know, the phoenix earlier, like, you know, what powerful symbolism I actually have on here. I'm looking at it, that's what I'm saying. So this little phoenix necklace, you see it?
Oh, how synchronous.
Amazing, right? It's literally sitting here looking at me. So yeah, just thinking back to that imagery, and if there's an energy that you want to hold in mind, you know, seeing that symbol will recall it in your body as well, right? It will help you connect to that feeling. So it's different for different people, but if you can find something that symbolizes that feeling you're trying to embody, so every time you see it, it's like, it's almost like a reminder. You're
I
telling
love
your brain,
that.
yeah, this is where
Oh,
we're going.
so good. A
Yeah.
great way to end. It's like, you know,
Mm.
instead of seeing to believing, it's that
Yeah.
believing to seeing, and that belief and that faith in yourself, in the universe, in God, that this is happening for you instead of to you. And it's like, you got to believe it. So I loved how you spoke about the subconscious mind not knowing the difference. So in the journaling process and visualization work that I do with people, I'm like, imagine your life from 5 years from now. Imagine how it feels in your body. Imagine who is next to you if you're calling in your soulmate. Imagine if you're wanting to build a new house or have somewhere new to live or have this business or have this career. What does that feel like in your body? Because imagination is more important than knowledge, as Albert Einstein says. So I love how you brought that about, you know, that imagination and that belief and bringing in the symbols. Like I loved how you spoke about taking photos. Like we just redid our lounge and it was like, oh, this feels really good. And then I see old photos like of my bedroom, for example, which we redid a while ago, but I'm like, oh, it doesn't look like that anymore. Okay, I need to go and clean these things. And it's like keeping yourself accountable because we're human. There are things that happen, but just,
Notice.
yeah, noticing and believe that the shifts are there and that you can move through them. So, so beautiful. And the signs and the synchronicities and the symbols, if you notice and you lean into it, so good, so good. Well, if any beautiful people have any, like I haven't been in the Facebook page, if you have questions for Emily or I, pop them in there. Emily also has another beautiful Facebook group too, and I'm in there and I jump in and I love just connecting with people and just sharing stories, and like I love promoting other people too because that's what you're passionate about, and it removes this identity of competition. It removes that identity of, well, you're just in it for yourself. And it's like, let's collaborate. Let's like celebrate each other. And so what's your group called, Emily?
So my group is called Focused and Fulfilled. I don't know how we'll do that. We might drop it in underneath this video, maybe, just so people know where to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we really enjoy kind of meeting new people and encouraging people to step into their new identities. Like we like to provide space for people to do things that maybe they've been hoping to do, wishing to do. At the moment, you know, we're looking for people to do a live that have never done a live, right? Again,
That's what I
overseas
did with you. That was one of the first lives I
yeah.
did with you. So that was
That's amazing, you know, and it kickstarts everything, right? Because as soon as you do it, your brain's like, oh my gosh, it's possible. And then more things come out of that. So yeah, if you want to join, we'd love to have you there. Just pop a little request in and we'll let you in. And yeah, thank you so much. This has been a really good
So much.
session.
And
Mm.
yeah, just these virtual identities, like connect with people that resonate with you, and that you'll feel like, you know, if you're in those pages a lot, then obviously there's some messages there. But if you're not visiting pages like this virtual identity, it's like, well, get rid of them, cull them out, make room, make space for the things that you want to call in. So feel free to chat to us. And look, we're both coaches and we both have different expertises and different things. So if anybody wants to contact any one of us, feel free to message Emily or feel free to talk to myself. You know, this work that we do is so important, and, you know, that investment in yourself so that the cup can be full, that's some of the fear. And if any of this talk resonated, if any of this information just really sits in your being, like, I need to talk to Marie or I need to talk to Emily, then just go and talk to us, jump on a call or message us. And you know, being of service and loving to help other women and people to just rise in the potential of who they are. Like, that's why I have loved moving into this work and love working with my clients. And it's so important. And I continue to still invest in myself, and I continue to still spend the money, because that I am abundance and trusting in the universe. Because even though my bank account is like dropping down, I'm like, I'm making room, making space for it to grow. And it's
Amazing.
that mindset change and that identity and that version of myself this time last year would have held on to scarcity. And there's still fear and there's still a little bit of like, what am I doing? And I'm like, just jump in and do it. So if you want to contact us, jump in and do it, and we'll talk to you. So that is it for this beautiful morning or evening, wherever you are. And yeah, just have a beautiful, beautiful day wherever, or night. And I hope that this has sparked some joy and some inspiration and some assurity, if you are shifting and changing, that it's all okay, and that you've got a few different strategies now to help you shift into that new version of you, because it's happening for a lot of people. So thank you so much, Emily, for your time. Thank you, Danielle, for listening in, and all the Facebook peoples that are watching live or on the replay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.